Hello, my name is Rickard, and in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to recreate this pop art style movie poster in Photoshop. I've done a lot of tutorials on how to recreate Hollywood movie posters, but in this one, I'm doing something a little bit different. This is a short film that I produced and directed myself, and it was written by two of my friends, one of who is the star in the film. And what I want to do is show you how I created the movie poster for this film. Now, I created a series of movie posters all in this same style. So in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to recreate that in Photoshop. Now this video is sponsored by Boris FX. They've created a suite of filters for Photoshop called Optics. Now I'm not a big fan of third-party filters in Photoshop. However, this is the one exception, primarily because of the tools that it has for creating photorealistic flares. However, there's so much more that you can do with optics. And in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can use one of their pop art style filters to create a cool movie poster effect. If you're interested in getting this suite of filters, I have included a link to it in the description of this video. If you purchase it through that link, you do get a 15% discount and help me create tutorials like this one. Now, also, I have included a link to the assets that I use in this tutorial. It does include an action that you can use, which will get you a very similar result to what you get from Optics, but using the tools that are already inside Photoshop. So download that, and then let's dive into Photoshop. All right, first thing we're going to do is create a new file. You can do that from this blue button or go to File, New. Here, I want to make the width of my file 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the height 5, 1, 8, 4. I'm going to leave the resolution at 144 and change my color here to Adobe RGB 1998. So those are the settings. Let's hit create. Next thing I want to do is set up some guides so that as we're placing objects into our poster, you can follow along more easily. So let's go to View, Guides, New Guide Layout. And here I'm going to change the columns to 4 and get rid of the gutter. I'm going to change the rows to 4 and again get rid of the gutter. And then for the margins, I'm going to do a top margin of 250, a left and right margin of 340, and a bottom margin of 260. Let's hit OK. All right, now that we have our guides in place, let's go to File, Place Embedded, and inside the assets, you're going to see a Mariah photo. Mariah is the star of this film. And this is a photo from on set. So let's go ahead and do Command T for transform. Now, when you placed it, it may already be in transform, and that's okay. What you're going to do is stretch it out, and actually going to make it even bigger so that her eyebrow is kind of about that close to our edge there. And then I want this side of her face to kind of line up with this guide right there. So something like this, and her nose should be about in the middle. Okay, so next we're going to do a few adjustments just before we apply the halftone effect to the image. So first, let's go ahead and turn off our guides. We can do that here under View, Extras. We'll turn off the guides. Also, if you want other extras and just want to turn off the guides, you can also do that here under Show and Command semicolon. So if we do Command semicolon, that will turn off our guides. Okay, so first things first, let's go to File, Place Embedded, and you're going to see this flare. We're going to place this in a few places around our image, kind of give it that poppy look. I also want to just get rid of the color in this, so I'm going to do Command U. That'll bring up our hue saturation, and I'm going to bring down our saturation to 0. I'm going to turn this on to screen blending mode. And when it's on screen, you can see because it's not 100% black, we're getting this kind of weird circle here. I'm going to get rid of that with a curve. So I'm just going to do Command M for my curve or image adjustments curves. And here we just want to affect the black point. So if we go down here, we can drag this in until we get rid of those. So probably around there. And then I'm going to do Command T for transform and just make this smaller. And I want to add this kind of on the light right there, and then maybe another one on one of the highlights on this side. No, maybe right there actually works better. And then I also want to add some in her eyes. So we're going to take this, and I'm just holding down Option. That's making a copy as I drag this. I'm going to put one in that eye and then another one in this eye. And I just want to line this up with the existing highlight in her eye. So something like that. All right, the next thing I want to do here is just fill in the lipstick on her lip there. I can also just take all these flares and just put them in a folder called flares, kind of keep our file a little bit cleaner here. All right, so let's zoom in here, and I'm going to just go onto my normal brush. And here I just want a normal soft round brush. So let's select this one. And then if I hold down Control and Option and click and drag, I can adjust the size of my brush and also the hardness of my brush. So I'm just going to make this a bit smaller. And then when you're on your brush tool, if you hold down Option, you get the eyedropper, and we can select the color of the lips here. And let's just paint this in here. And this part here as well. And I kind of want this to blend into the existing lips. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on this, bring up my blend if options. And here what I can do is if the underlying layer is white, so here you can see where we have those highlights, I want those white highlights to pop through. And then by holding down Option, you can break this apart so that it's not so clipping, meaning it doesn't fall from one to the other. There's a bit of a feather between. So get it to about where you have the right number of highlights showing, and then hold down Option and just separate these a bit. So something like this. And then here, if there's darker parts, I want those to show. So I'm going to go kind of just to about there, and then hold down Option and split these as well. So something like that. And let's hit OK, and we can turn that on and off. That looks better. Now, because I'm going to apply a strong color halftone effect to this, I'm not super worried about the fine details because this is all going to turn into a halftone effect. All right, the next thing we're going to do is just add a little more color into her eyes. So I'm going to go ahead and add a layer here, and we can call this eye highlights. And it doesn't really matter what you name it, just a matter of keeping your file a little more organized. Let's go B to activate our brush tool again. I'm going to hold down Control and Option and just make sure my hardness or feather on the brush is 0. I'm going to make the brush a little bit bigger and then hit D on my keyboard. That'll default my colors to black and white. And then if I want to switch the color so that my foreground color is white, I can hit X on the keyboard. And here I'm going to just paint with white here and here. And then I'm going to change the blend mode here to overlay. And you can see that that's adding that lightness there. Now it's a little too much here. So I'm going to just hit E to go on the erase tool. Make my brush a little smaller. Kind of get rid of it there. Maybe a little bit. So let's take our flow down to maybe 30. And to interactively adjust this, on your keyboard, if you hold down Shift and 3, it'll set your flow to 30. You can just add a little bit in here. Oops, I am still on the erase tool. All right, let's do it again. Shift 3, and then there you go. Okay, so that looks better, maybe a little too strong. I'm going to take this down to maybe 70%. And when you're on the Move tool, if you hit 7 on your keyboard, that'll change the opacity. And holding down Shift will change the fill. Okay, so that looks pretty good. The other thing I want to do here is just do an overall curve to get a little more, a little nicer skin tone. So let's go to our adjustment layers, add a curve. I'm going to go to the red channel here. Just make this a little bit bigger here. And just on my red, I'm going to bring down the middle a little bit here. So something like this. And then on the RGB, do a tiny bit of an S curve. And then on the blue, I want to pull down just in the highlights here, add a little more yellow. And might have overdone it just a little bit on this red. Okay, I think that's pretty good. All right, next, I want to make the area that's in the sunglasses contrast much stronger. So I want a much stronger color effect on that. So first, I need to mask these out. Now, there's a lot of options for masking in Photoshop. I think for this, I'm probably just going to draw the mask. So I'm going to go to my pen tool, make sure up here that it's on path instead of shape. And then I'm going to click again for my next anchor point and then drag to create this curve. And I'm going to do that around the shape of these sunglasses. And the reason I like using the pen tool for something like this is because we have nice curves and the pen tool allows me to work with those curves quite easily compared to something like the lasso, which, you know, unless you have the most stable hand in the universe, is going to be a little shaky. And I'm going to kind of fast forward through this. You probably don't need to see me do the entire selection in real time. It's going to get boring real quick, but just know that I'm just clicking, dragging, and making as few points as I need to, but enough so that I can do a pretty nice selection around this. And remember, again, you are going to apply a color halftone effect to this entire thing. So you don't need this selection to be absolutely perfect either. I'm probably doing a little bit better of a selection than I actually need here. Now with my path here still active, meaning it's still blue, if I start drawing over here, it's going to add this path to my same path layer. And if we open paths here, you can see that that is my work path. Okay, so now we have a path. What I can do is select the path like this, and then right mouse click and say make selection. And then in my layers, I'm going to add another curve layer. And when you add an adjustment layer with an active selection, what it's going to do is it's going to add a mask for you. So here I now have a mask, and what I want to do is add that stronger color just in this area. So first I'm going to add a little bit of an S curve, just to make it a little darker here and a little brighter up here. That's already doing a lot of what I want. I'm also going to go to my red, add a bit of red here, and probably pull down the green, which will add a little bit of magenta. And if I want this to be a little more pink, I can pull out a little bit of that yellow too. So give it more of a poppy magenta red color. And I also want to give that color to this, the lips area here. And let's just go ahead and do another path. Now I do not have my path selected anymore. Now the problem with that is if I start making this, you'll see that my other path that I spent a lot of time making has disappeared. So I'm going to Command Z. What you want to do is just go ahead and name this, just in case you need to go back and use that again. Now when I start making a new path, it will create a work path again, but my glasses path is saved as well in case I ever need that. And that should do the trick. Let's right mouse click, make selection. And because I already have a curve here, all I need to do is go onto my mask and fill this selection with white. So to do that, I can make my foreground color white and then hold down Option and hit Delete or Backspace. And that looks pretty darn good. Now what we're going to do is create this halftone effect. Now for this, I'm going to be using a filter called Optics by Boris FX. So first I'm going to make a new layer and we're going to call this Halftone. And I want to smash everything into this. Now I am noticing here that this effect on the lip is a little bizarre because it should be softer. So what I might do there is just load my selection, which I'm doing by holding Command and clicking on the thumbnail. Then I want to just select this selection. So rather than unselecting this stuff, I can just hold down Shift and Option with my lasso. That'll create an intersect, and then I can just do that. Then I'm going to go on to the Mariah photo and click on Select and Mask and just increase my radius here so that this kind of hugs the lip, and then hit OK. And then I need to add that to this mask. Now here's a problem. I need to add it to this mask, but this mask already has a selection here. So what to do? Well, I can go to my channels and create a alpha channel and fill that with white. So now I've essentially saved that selection. I can go back to my mask, and if I want to look at the mask by itself, I can hit Option and click on the thumbnail. Fill this in with black with, again, Option Delete with black as my foreground color. Then go to my alpha channel, load that selection, and on the mask, fill that with white. And that looks better. We don't have that hard line there anymore. Okay, so now back to my halftone layer. I want to smash all of these layers into my halftone. So I'm going to do Shift, Option, Command E. That'll merge everything into this layer. I'm going to convert this to a smart object. And now we're going to go to Filter, Boris FX, and Optics. Now, if you don't have the Boris FX Optics, I have included a link in the description of this video where you can get it with a 15% discount. But also, after I've shown you how to do this with Optics, I will show you another option for doing it with the tools in Photoshop. The final effect is not as nice as the one you're going to get with Optics, which is why I've used Optics for my poster. But if you don't have it and getting it right now is not an option for you, I will show you another way to do this. Okay, so if you're not super familiar with Optics, the way this works is you have kind of a layer stack of effects here. So you can stack up a bunch of effects on top of each other. So here's our original image. And then this current active layer is the first effect that I'm going to add to this photo. Now there's a lot of effects in here. There's various painting effects. There's all sorts of things that you can do with optics. And if you just click on these, you get some idea of some of the cool effects that you can create. Now there's a lot of various options in here, a lot of different things that you can do. And the presets, there's probably more than 100. So this little handy search tool is great because here I already know I want a halftone effect. So I'm going to type that in and right away you can see the 3 options. I want to use this halftone effect right here. And most of the settings are already what I want. However, I don't want such big dots. So I'm going to go over here to the parameters on the right, and this is where you can change that preset. So basically the presets just load these parameters and then you can change those parameters. So here, the first option is RGB versus CMY. Now printing typically is done with CMY. So if you want an effect that has that pop art kind of look, you're going to want to use CMY. So let's set that to CMY. The only thing we're really going to change here is the dot frequency. I'm going to push this up to about 88. Now, if you click on this, you get this weird calculator that allows you to put in an exact amount and then hit the return and get it. You can also click here, up or down, and then this here resets it to what the default is. So you'll see as I change it here, this turns white. That means this is no longer the default. And if I click on it, I go back to the default. So those are the various ways that you can change this. I'm going to click and drag on the number itself. That's probably the easiest way to change these settings. And I'm going to bring this up to 88. And let's hit apply. So this is the effect that I'm getting from my optics. Now, if you don't have optics and you don't want to get it, I will show you another way to do this just using Photoshop. So first, you may think, well, there's already a halftone effect in Photoshop. Why aren't you using that? So first, I want to show you why I'm not using that. So first, let's make a copy of this smart object. And let's get rid of the optics effects on there. I'm just going to drag that smart filter to the trash can here. Okay, so now we're back to our original, and let's go to Filter, Pixelate, Color Halftone. And let's set this to 25 pixels and hit OK. And you can see that the effect is nowhere near as nice as the one we're getting from optics. Now there's a few reasons for this. The primary one is that within the optics effect, which we'll just bring up here for reference, you have a lot of various things that it's doing kind of under the hood to make this more realistic. So for starters, it is shifting the red and it's shifting the blue. It's also blurring the mask. Also, if we look closely here at the effect, whoops, you'll see that these dots are offset from each other, and also there isn't really a black. The black is created by the C, M, and Y stacking on top of each other. Whereas with this color halftone effect, there's a separate black, and it's just not as nice of an effect. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this one away, but I want to show you one other thing that you can do. So I'm going to detach this so that we have a separate file. I'm going to go to Image, Duplicate, and we're going to call this halftone effect. And what I want to do here is I want to get rid of the filter and get rid of all the other layers in this file. And then I want to rasterize this. So now I just have this one layer. And I'm also, just to make sure that I don't have anything outside. Yep, that looks good. Okay, so this is what I want. I want a file with one layer, and I've created an action that you can use that'll get a somewhat similar effect to this. Certainly a lot better than the one that you're going to get straight out of Photoshop. But this filter doesn't require you having optics. So go to your actions panel here, go to here and go to load actions. And in the assets for this tutorial, you're going to see this Nucly halftone actions. Let's go ahead and load those. And you see 3 in here. These 2 actions are just a little bonus actions from my full set of Nucly actions. One gives you layers from your RG and B channels, and then this one gives you layers from your CMYK channels. Now this one here is the one we're going to use, so go ahead and select that and then click on the play button down here. So first, it's just going to make sure that you have only one layer in your file. We have already made sure we've done that, so let's hit continue. Okay, next, it's just telling you here that this action is set up for a 5,000 pixel tall file. So if your file is not that size, you're going to want to adjust what pixel size your halftone effect is. So in this case, we're using a file that I set up this action for, so I'm just going to hit continue. Okay, so here you can see the settings that we're using. I'm not going to change any of these, but if you're using this action on a different file size, you may want to change this in particular, the maximum radius here. So let's hit OK. Okay, so now in the background, it's doing the entire action. And here there's a little note, but I'm going to explain it to you. So you can see it's still not as nice as the one you're getting here, but it's certainly a lot closer than the one that's straight out of Photoshop, which is this here. So with this, you at least get those blacks back in. And then I've also included one other option here. Also, if you zoom in here, by the way, you can see that we have that offset happening, which is one of the really nice features in here. Now, the problem with the effect straight out of Photoshop is it doesn't give you that offset feature. So this is basically the halftone option original, but with some adjustments to get it closer to this. Now, this I would say is the closest that you're going to get to this effect without using optics. So for those of you who don't have optics or don't have the option of getting it now, this is the closest alternative. You can just drag this halftone layer back into your RGB file or your master file here, close this without saving, and then let's continue with our tutorial. Now this is, let's call this Photoshop filters and action, and we can call this one halftone from optics. I'm going to use the halftone from optics, so I'm going to turn this one off. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is add our titling. Now before I add the titling, which is going to be white, I kind of need to knock back the white in the image itself so that my white text shows up. So to do that, I'm just going to add a curve layer, and I'm just going to pull down kind of the top of this curve here, probably to about there, and then just a little contrast there. So something like this. All this is doing is knocking back my white so that my white text will show up. Okay, so next we're going to first apply the big movie title in the center of the frame. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my guides with Command semicolon, go onto my text tool, which is T, and here I want to use the font called Rubik, which is a Google font. If you don't have it, you can download it. And we're going to make the main title black. I'm going to set the size of it to 255. And then the color, I want a cyan color. So let's go here and we can do 5C FFF9. That's a nice bright cyan color. And let's go here. Whoops. All right, looks like we're gonna have to set that again. So 5CFFF9. And then we're gonna type in zippy ride. Let's select all that and bring this back up to 255. And I want this to kind of reside somewhere around here. That looks pretty good. And I'm going to go back onto my text tool and bring up my text palettes. And you want this tracking here set to -20. So just make sure this here is set to -20. That'll make the letters kind of tighter together. All right, so that looks pretty good. The other thing I do want here is I want just a little bit of the pattern in the background showing through. So to do that, I'm going to double click here on the side and bring up my blending options. And down here under underlying layer, I want it to show through like this, but just a very tiny bit. So I'm going to hold down Option and then just bring this to 5 and then hit OK. So that looks good. All right, next we're going to add the credits here, or some of the credits. So let's go back to our text tool. I'm going to click here and type a Rickard Rodin film. I'm going to select all with Command A. Take this down to 69. I'm going to change this from black to bold. And let's change the color of this to white. And then this is just going to sit on top right about there. And I'm actually going to select both of these and just bump them down a little bit to about there. And then to make sure this is readable, I'm just going to add another layer here, and just with my square marquee tool, I'm going to select kind of a block behind the text here. And I don't want it to go right to the top, so kind of the X height of this text. I'm going to select this red background color and then do Option Delete to fill. And I'm going to set this to darken. So just where it's lighter than that red color, it'll show through. And that'll just help make this text a little more readable. All right, then I'm going to select both of these layers, the red blocked background and this text that I just made. Hold down Option and then drag these up here. And here I want to put my actor's name. That is going to be Christian Marchant. And I'm going to select this and change the point size to 60. And I'm just kind of centering it on this guide right here. And then I'm going to take my red block and make it a bit smaller. I just want it to be basically the size of this text, so something like this. And then I'm going to select both of these again, hold down Option and drag them to the right. And I'm going to make my female actress name here, which is Mariah Boone. And then I'll select her red block, do Command T, hold down Shift, and just make this the size of her type there. So looking good, looking good. The last thing I want to do is add a tagline here. So I'm just going to grab my last created text block, hold down Option, drag it down here. And for this one, I want to make it kind of a reddish color. So let's go to our red and we make it just a little bit magenta-ish red. So something like this. I think that looks good. Then I'll do Option Delete That'll again fill in this color. And then finally, I want to make this a little bit bigger and I want to make it left aligned. So we'll make this 100. And here I have this text start about there and it's going to say ever. And I'm doing, in order to make this, I'm just doing the return hookup in your car. Actually, let's move the in to this line. And then let's move these down a little bit to about there. And I don't want this bumping into her, so I'm just adjusting my type here. And I might make this even a little tighter. So if we do Command T, change this to -40. And I think that looks good. I might just change this just to be safe to about 90. And I'm happy with that. All right, then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull in my credits here. So I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded, and grab these bottom titles. Command T to make these a bit smaller, and then drag them, drag them to this bottom here. There you go. And just to make these readable, directly underneath them, I'm going to add a bottom gradient. For this, I'm going to go to my gradient tool, and here I prefer using the classic gradient over the gradient. The difference is the gradient will create a new dynamic gradient layer, whereas classic gradient works in the old way of just adding pixels to your active layer. So classic gradient, I'm on foreground to transparent under my basic. So I'm just going to hit D on my keyboard, default my colors to black and white, and then add a little bit of a gradient at the bottom here so that this shows up, and maybe take that down to about there. And now if I turn off my guides, I'm pretty happy with that poster. And the reason I went with this style of poster is that I could easily repeat this for other frames or other characters in the film, even if I had a low resolution, just a still from the video as opposed to a photo taken on set. So that was kind of one of the reasons I went with this design. Also, I like this kind of pop art style, and it goes well for the short film itself. So there you have it. That's how you recreate that movie poster in Photoshop. And hopefully through the course of this, you learn some tips, tricks, and techniques that you can use in your own projects. I also mentioned at the beginning that this is a short film that I produced and directed myself. So if you're interested in watching it, it is a 15-minute short, and I will include a link to it in the description of the video. Now, if you're interested in learning Photoshop and professional training and tools for Photoshop, check out nucly.com. That is my website. Otherwise, here are some other tutorials that you can check out, and I will see you next time.